So I'm going to just activate this stream. And we are live. Thank you, Ros, for coming, offering to present today. I'm fascinated to hear what you've got to say, and I'm sure others are. I'll just let you take over.
I just wanted to make sure everyone that's here has met, so to speak, Robin. Robin, wave your hand. So Robin is the secretary of Deborah's Tree, and she's visiting with us today from Ohio in the United States. And we also have Paige Morahan, who has just arrived. And Paige is from Brenathan, Pennsylvania. So we have a few international visitors. So yeah, the topic for today is Deborah's Tree. And now there we go. And so Deborah's Tree is a nonprofit organization, a religious organization organized in Pennsylvania, USA. And I'm the founder and I guess president of the board. And it's been a passion of mine for a while, so I finally got it going during the pandemic. I'm sorry about the dogs barking in the background. I closed the door, but they still want to come in. Sorry. So people have asked me sort of like, well, what's the story? Like, where did this come from? And so the story is probably around 10 years ago, maybe more. I was at a conference about church outreach. And Tony Jones was the main speaker. Now, Tony Jones at that point was a leader in the emergent Christian movement, which was a movement in Christianity of people who wanted to rethink how church is done, rethink traditional Christian doctrines. You might say they were the new church within the traditional Christian churches. And Tony Jones had a lot of success and a lot of ideas about how to do that. And part of the message that I took away anyway was that people are not interested that much in organized religion. In fact, they're pretty suspicious about organized religion, a lot of people. They do not want a traditional church building with pews and organ music. They want something a lot more up to date and in line with the rest of their life. And they want to use social media to connect with their church community. And so he had founded a church called Solomon's Porch, which did have a physical location, but it didn't look at all traditional. It did have worship services that were fairly contemporary. But he had a lot of outreach on Facebook and Twitter, which at that time, 10 years ago, with the big social media, Instagram hadn't really been developed at that point, I don't think. He gave a lot of information how to connect with your congregation on Facebook and Twitter, which he did. So I was very interested in that. And I kind of thought, if I were to ever do that, I would maybe set up a church like that called Deborah's Tree. I would use a different biblical image of the prophetess Deborah sitting under her tree. And I was fascinated with all the social media and Twitter possibilities of creating community. And that just kept there going in my background of my mind as I was preparing for ordination for many years. And then finally, in 2020 in the pandemic, I was laid off of my regular job as a nurse for months. In the meantime, I'd become ordained as a minister. For many years, I've been leading a congregation of which Paige was a member of the home church in Brenathan. So I was, being a pastor, but not in the way I had imagined for Deborah's Tree. So anyway, in the pandemic, when I was laid off, I had the time to incorporate a nonprofit religious organization, Deborah's Tree, and then to set up a website. Now, in the meantime, my thinking about what Deborah's Tree would be had changed from a traditional congregation to a spiritual community, because something else that had happened that he mentioned, Tony Jones, and that I'd observed, was that people that are spiritual but not religious is a major component of the faith spectrum around the world. And so I wanted to reach people that are spiritual, but not necessarily religious. And that combined with my work with Gathering Leaves and Swedenborgian and New Church Women, it sort of coalesced in my mind to becoming an organization that would promote the work of female Swedenborgian and New Church scholars and writers and clergy and artists, and then maybe other kind of work that Swedenborgian and New Church women are doing that I'm not aware of. So that's what I incorporated, and then a website to go along with that to promote the work and to preserve the work of women around the world in Swedenborgian and New Church communities. I had some experience with websites and set up a website for Gathering Leaves at one point, and helped my daughter with one. So I thought, oh, this will be easy. I think Wix is probably the best site for that. And so they had a template for churches. So I used that template, and I sat at my computer ready to set it up, and I was stymied. I could not make head nor tail of what they were asking me to do. So I contacted my friend Liz Cuffs, and I'm like, please help. I don't know what I'm doing. And I gave her my sign on, and we were on the phone, and I hear her clicking the keys. And I said, look, it's only got 4 tabs on this template, and I need 6 tabs, and I don't know what to do, like combine some things, like I don't know what to do. She goes, well, actually, I just went into the code and I just added 2 tabs. And if you need more tabs, we can do that too. I'm like, right, I've got the right person to help me with a website. So she's been invaluable in setting this up. I just realized I've got my Word document that I'm reading from up, and it's obliterating the screen, so I won't know if you've got your hand up. So I guess if you have a question, then you want to interrupt me, just unmute yourself and ask a question, all right? So people might ask, why would I want to promote Swedenborgian New Church women? What's the need for that? Because around the world, there are definitely female leaders in Swedenborgian communities. Currently, Swedenborgian Church of North America has female leaders. The conference in England does. The Philippine New Church has had a female leader. I don't know if she's still there, Merlita Rogers. So it's not as if women are absent from the organizations, but a lot of our history is, well, without a doubt, over the 200 years or so forth of the Swedenborgian churches, male leadership has been the norm. And in addition to that, sort of historically, at least from what I see, the Judeo-Christian and New Church texts and worship styles and other traditions have been developed in a predominantly male culture. And from the point of view of male spirituality, I'm going to say in my life, I wasn't aware of the difference between male spirituality and female spirituality until I was an adult and started feeling uncomfortable with some things, like always, well, in the translations, a person, he, this, he, that, and I would have to do this mental gymnastics to turn that around to me. That includes me. I'm a woman, man or mankind instead of humankind, because I don't feel like a man. I don't feel like part of mankind. I feel part of humankind. But so all of those aspects of church, including the Swedenborgian New Churches, have been developed from those perspectives. What I would say the hallmarks or so forth of the of male spirituality would be a transcendent and distant divine, emphasizing wisdom and truth and thinking rather than love and good and emotion. That the spiritual path is one of spiritual warfare rather than a path of nurturing and healing. I don't know if that sounds right to any of you, but at least to me, there's a sort of like what I would say characteristics of male spiritual perspectives that have been the crucible in which everything to do with our churches pretty much has been developed. And so along with that, the sort of values associated with male energy are mostly, I would say, dominant in our traditions. And those values would be hierarchical leadership, emphasis again on truth and wisdom and teaching and preaching, and a value for individual independence and for debate and division and fight and flight, so that if somebody has a different doctrinal understanding than you, then you get up and you fight about it. And if you just can't resolve it, you split and you split and you split. And that's how we ended up with a multitude of small, very small, mostly branches of the Swedenborgian New Church tree because of a sort of fight and flight male energy. This is how I understand it. You can certainly challenge me on that, but that's what I see. On the other hand, values associated with female energy, which are not prevalent in our, or not as prevalent, I would say, in our global Swedenborgian New Church communities, would be values for leadership based on partnership, and an emphasis on love and goodness and nurturing, an emphasis on relationships instead of individuality, value for compromise, and then in response to stress or differences, tending and befriending, which means, well, what more like a compromise. Instead of trying to fight somebody with a different point of view, you try to befriend them and find out how we can work and get along together. My friend Julie Conneron, whom you will see later on the website, has said if it was left up to the women with all these doctrinal differences that have happened over the years, probably they would just sit down with a cup of tea and talk it out and try to come up to a different solution than splitting. So that's part of the reason why I would want to lift up the work of female scholars, etc., because I want to legitimize and promote and preserve women's work in our global faith tradition. And the purpose of that for me is to work towards a balance of male and female values and spirituality perspectives. Not so much, not at all, to try and have women like run the whole show or anything like that, but just to get a balance in our values. And when we have a balance in our values, then we will have a balance in the voices and the strength of those voices within our community. That's my hope. But I do also need to acknowledge that individual men and women are different and may not necessarily hold the values that are associated with their gender. And I want to avoid stereotypes. There's one female pastor that I know in the Swedenborgian Church of North America who sort of says, what she says about herself that she values is her intellect. And people want to make it all about her relationships and her nurturing. And she goes, yeah, sure, I'm a mother, I'm a friend. I do nurturing and relationships, but what I value is my intellect. So there are differences. And so I don't want to be making any kind of stereotypes, but there are sort of some generalities that I'm referring to. So I want to strengthen our own, this is just long-term view, the reasons why I would do this. I want to strengthen the values for female spirituality within our communities, but I also want to add Swedenborgian and New Church perspectives in the worldwide women's spirituality movement. So I do want to go way beyond where we are now. But first of all, I feel like we need to crystallize those perspectives first within our own spiritual community, our own faith community, because not a lot of work has been done on that. So I think that's our first task, to become clear what a specifically Swedenborgian or New Church female spirituality is or would look like, and be ready to then share that in the wider world, women's spirituality movement. So it was, intentional that I chose a female prophet, Deborah, who judged the people of Israel and communicated the divine's word in her time. Usually, in my experience, it's the male prophets who are usually taught and remembered. If people think of prophets, they think of a man, usually Isaiah or somebody like that. Very occasionally, is there a text of a sermon or a reading that is about a woman. I don't know that I've ever heard of Deborah being taught in church and in a sermon or anything. And I might, correct me if the ministers here have done that. But Anna, the prophetess, and Miriam definitely. But Deborah's maybe somebody that people learned about in Sunday school or something like that, but she's not very prominent. I think that she's an appropriate prophet for lifting up the way that women can provide guidance and leadership and wisdom and stability in the church, because that's in the story what she did for the people in the Israel community. So if you will sit back and relax, well, you're probably already doing that, but I'm just going to read a little bit from Judges 4, verses 4 to 9, just about Deborah to refresh your memory about her. And then excerpts from the Song of Deborah, which is like a whole chapter 5. And I'm just going to read little bits of that, a couple of verses. So the context for this story is that a Canaanite king called Jabin was fighting Israel, and his general was Sisera. Sisera was leading his army, and they were, I think for like, I forget, 20 years or something like that, the children of Israel had been enslaved by Jabin. And then we read, a prophetess named Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth, was judge of Israel at that time. Deborah would sit under the palm tree of Deborah, which was between the cities of Ramah and Bethel in the mountains of Ephraim, and the people of Israel would come to her to settle their arguments. Deborah sent a message to Barak, son of Abinoam. Barak lived in the city of Kadesh, which is in the area of Naphtali. Deborah said to Barak, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go and gather 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them to Mount Tabor. I will make Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army and his chariots and his army, meet you at the Kishon River. I will hand Sisera over to you. Then Barak said to Deborah, I will go if you will go with me. But if you won't go with me, I won't go. Of course I'll go with you, Deborah answered, but you will not get credit for the victory. The Lord will let a woman defeat Sisera. And then the rest of the chapter continues about the battle where King Jabin's army is completely destroyed under Barak's leadership, but with Deborah saying, now's the time to attack. Then they attacked and completely destroyed King Jabin's army. Jabin tried to run away, but was eventually killed by a woman, just as was prophesied. And so then the next chapter, Judges 5, is the Song of Deborah, and it's sung by Deborah and Barak about their story. And the salient bits that I wanted to read go like this. There were no warriors in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, until I arose to be a mother to Israel. Wake up, Deborah. Wake up, sing a song. Get up, Barak. Go capture your enemies, son of Abinoam. The kings came and they fought, but they took away no silver or possessions of Israel. Then there was peace in the land for 40 years. So, of course, being Swedenborgians and New Church people, we can hear this story in many different ways, in correspondential ways about our inner work and ways that this story can apply to our lives. But I'm focusing specifically sort of on an organizational way of how this story serves, or how my work serves this image of Deborah, the tree, and arising and fighting King Jabin's army, and then bringing peace. So in Swedenborgian teachings, when I search it, Deborah herself is described as the one who delivered the Israelite nation, and she's only mentioned one time. And then there's one other mention, which is both Deborah and Barak being the ones that did the saving. The first number from Swedenborg is AE 811. I'm just looking at the time here. Yep. And it basically says that Deborah's delivering the nation of Israel from being enslaved by King Jabin tells the story of how opening up new truths delivers us from times of being enslaved to our false understandings. I can think of plenty of times when I've had a false narrative going in my mind, that's sort of running my life. And then at some point, whether a friend says something or I hear it in the word, somehow a new truth comes in and changes that and delivers me from this false understanding that's running my life. So that's what I believe this is about. That this would be the state of the Jewish church when truths should be opened before the Gentiles, by which they might be delivered from falsities, is signified by when I shall bring back the captivity of my people. In the historical parts of the word, the captives of the sons of Israel by various enemies and their deliverances have a like signification, as that they were given over to Jabin, king of Canaan, and delivered by Deborah. And so that's the liberation by Deborah from being captive, spiritually captive. And in AE 447, Deborah and Barak together picture truth that is based in goodness winning over falsity that is based in evil. So that gives it a little bit more of a nuance. Maybe this false narrative that I have that's running my life is actually based on an evil, so some kind of self-serving belief that is not good. And that generates a narrative, a false narrative that's running my life. But then this other truth comes in, and this truth is based in goodness. It's not just an isolated truth that's sort of cold, hard truth, but it's something that's really based in goodness. I may have had an experience of doing something good, and a truth comes out of that illuminates that this false narrative that's running my life is false and needs to go. And that truth then wins. And so, to quote from AE, the prophecy uttered by Barak and Deborah treats in the spiritual sense of the victory of truth from good over falsity from evil, and of the purification and reformation of the church. I'm always interested in hearing, well, sort of how people or how you would feel this story unfolding in your inner spiritual life. And well, I'm pretty sure the Robinsons would be spot on. I don't know if they're here because I can't see the screen right now. But for today, like I said, I'm focusing on a more external sort of organizational level. And so I've taken the imagery of the palm tree of Deborah, and then the verses about arise as a mother and wake up, Deborah, and sing a song. I'm taking that imagery for the organization, Deborah's Tree. So what I'm envisioning is Swedenborgian and New Church women around the world sitting still under our collective palm tree and speaking our truth from the divine, from our own female perspectives. Much like is happening in Australia in the women's weekends that Jen Bison has organized. And that's the part of sitting under the tree and listening and being still. But then we actively arise and wake up and sing our own song by living our own authentic female spirituality and sharing joyfully what we have learned together, both within our global spiritual community and with the wider female spiritual community. So that's how I take that imagery for who we are as Deborah's Tree. So I can tell you so far what has happened since Liz Cuff saved me and we got the website up and going and incorporated Deborah's Tree. So far, we have a board of directors. It's required legally for a nonprofit to have a board of directors so that it's not one person going rogue with charitable donations and so forth. And so I'm the president. The secretary is with us today, Pastor Robin Ferryman, and our treasurer is Reverend Julie Conneran. And we have a website which is collecting content from women, which is sitting still. And Liz Cuffs is the website manager, and I'm doing some things for it. And when I'm done speaking, I'm going to show you that website. And what I mean by collecting content that women around the world. So far it's just people in the USA, maybe Canada, but I'm going to expand. We've partnered with the Lord's New Church in Bronathan, well, the Philadelphia Society of the Lord's New Church, which is in Bronathan, for live events that we've done, because they, it's a mutuality in trying to support Swedenborgian New Church women and women's spirituality. They do not ordain women in the Swedenborgian, in the Lord's New Church, but the Philadelphia Society particularly, I guess if left to their own resources would, and they want to, they have women doing a lot of things in their churches. So they're very happy to be partnering with us in our live events. They give us access to their buildings, to their people, and it's a wonderful thing. So the first thing we did October, a couple months ago, was a launch event. To me, this is the first of the Arise kind of things that we've done. It was a brunch at the Lord's New Church, and we had some speakers that have, like Julie and myself and Liz, who, like I mentioned, is the website person, and then opened it up for women to brainstorm events and activities. Well, men and women were attending. So we had men and women brainstorming events and activities, basically to serve our faith communities, women and men. And so based on that, we've done two things. One of them was an art exhibit with a silent auction and a lecture given by a young artist, Eleanor Schnar, and her chosen Indian name is Punitavati Amaya. And so she is fascinated with the confluence of yoga, Hindu yoga, and Swedenborg, based on her extensive study of the brain and Swedenborg's teachings of the brain. So like the brain, meditative states in yoga, what Swedenborg says about that. And she's found out that there were, she said at one point, 1 million Swedenborgian Hindus around the turn of the century, I think, in this one particular region in India. So she is on a spiritual research trip to India, and we held an art exhibit of her work, which is amazing, and auctioned some of it off to raise some money for her. And she gave a fascinating lecture. Anyway, so that's one thing that we did based on our launch event and discussion. And then we started what we're calling the Spiritual Inspiration Program. So this is Wake Up, because it's at 8:30 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We bring spiritual inspiration. Well, we're hoping that it's inspiring anyway. So on Tuesdays, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US, we have excerpted inspirations. Linda Simonetti Odna, she used to be the editor of Theta Alpha Journal, for those who may have received that journal. She's excerpted from literature, inspiring passages. So it's not just like a short little quote, that you can hold in your mind, but it's part of a story that has a spiritual point. So that goes up on our blog page on the website. It goes on our Facebook page, and it goes out to Twitter on Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. Then you have to wait till Thursday, but on Thursday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US, a spiritual reflection by a female minister goes up on our Facebook page, either Facebook Live, or it might be pre-recorded and goes live at 8:30. And they're like basically around 7 minutes long, just a little jump start your day with a spiritual reflection. Besides the Facebook page, it goes on the watch page of our website, and it goes on Twitter as well. And then we sent out a fundraising letter. I called it an annual, but I should have maybe called it first annual fundraising letter. Went out in December, and we raised $1,800, which is wonderful. Does a lot for us. So, future plans, future ideas. We are going to have a silent retreat at the Lord's New Church in April. April is springtime, so it'll be a much better time, because right now it's winter in the US, but it'll be, much better weather to do a silent retreat at the Lord's New Church. They have a beautiful property with a lot of wooded areas, and they have what they call the spiritual path, which is a trail through the woods, and periodically there are little carved signs with a quote from the Bible on one side and a quote from Swedenborg in the other. And it's a very large, gorgeous property. So we're going to have a silent retreat there, because at the brunch, when somebody suggested that, a lot of heads nodded like, yeah, we want a silent retreat. We want a day where we can go and be quiet, and our cell phones aren't ringing, our mobile phones, nobody's trying to call us, our children aren't bothering us, our grandchildren, we're just going to be quiet. So we're going to try a silent retreat for one day. And I do want to extend an invitation to Swedenborgian and New Church women around the world to join us in our silent retreat in whatever way they can, whether that's take a few hours to be silent in your own home, or maybe a group of women to gather together for a silent retreat, and we can be retreating in silence together. Of course, in Australia, that might not work because it's sort of automatically a silent retreat because it's probably nighttime, but anyway. Another suggestion has been to do weekend or week-long retreats at the Lord's New Church, not to compete with Gathering Leaves or any other gatherings of women, but just to get together, whoever can locally or from the US, maybe that might want to fly in. Okay, Zoom talks. One that was suggested was following the call, because there's several ways that women can answer the call to be a mother, to be a minister, to be an artist like Eleanor Schnarr, whatever. What's involved in following the call, and what do we have to put on hold in our lives to be able to follow a call? And specifically as women, what are the competing requirements in our lives that we might have to sort of set aside or deal with in some specific way when we follow a call to whatever it is? Also, book club meetings. We have several books on the website that we could read and have Zoom meetings, and that way people around the world and around the country can come together. We've had an art show, but also a suggestion was concerts. This would have to wait till pandemic times are over probably to actually have a concert. Chelsea Rose Odner, she is, I forget now, she's the position has changed, but in Off the Left Eye, she's done a lot of production, and she goes live in some of the discussions. She actually in 2019 put out an album of songs that she had written called Confident Hope. She's an amazing musician. So just, a live concert with Chelsea Rose Odin would be awesome. We also want to get content from women outside of the US onto the website. And Sarah Walker actually has sent us some things. And so we are going to be in the very near future adding her to our website and her work with local practices. And then in the future, women's spirituality, movement, engagement. We're already following some of the leaders in that movement on Twitter, and some of them are following us. Not much for them to follow for us because we only post twice a week, but that's how those kind of engagements start. And finally, there is grant funding that I can apply for from sources within the Swedenborgian Church of North America, so that we won't have to rely on just donations, but also have some funding from the Swedenborgian Church. So at this point, any questions before I go over to show you the website?
I'll just let everybody know that your microphones have been muted. If you want to speak, you'll have to unmute yourself, and then I'll ask you to mute yourself again when you're finished.
Could I speak?
Oh, yes.
My thought when you were talking about falsities, perhaps it's not so much falsities as like frozen in time perspectives that need to be melted and released.
Frozen perspectives. Yes.
And maybe like an idol is like a frozen image that is no longer live, no longer giving life, and needs to be enlivened. We all wear a mask to a degree, but we need to bring life to our mask. And it's not so much our mask is false, but we need to bring life to it. That's my understanding.
Yeah, well, that's a great perspective, because it's not always cut and dried about truth.
It's not that it's false. It was
Yeah.
probably true. It had a usefulness, but it's time to move on, you might say. Perhaps it's useful to move on.
Yes.
It's just
Stan, we're unable to hear you, I'm afraid. Something's happened with your microphone, or I wonder if your headset's got unplugged.
no worries.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so at this point, I see there's 2 items in the chat, which I can't read at this point.
Yeah, there were comments from Paige.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you, Paige, for writing in the chat. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read that fine print. But if I have glasses on, they glare and it's not good. So anyway, I'll share the screen. And so we'll go to the website. Why can I not see it? Why does it say Zoom United? What are you seeing?
So it says Ros Taylor has started screen sharing. Have you selected the particular screen you're going to share and then hit? There we go. We can see it now.
There we go. All right. I don't know what it did. These things mystify me sometimes. Okay. So here we have Deborah's tree. This is the homepage, the landing page. There's a little video that I could play for you if you want. It's just a few minutes. Here we go. Does this work? Tell me if it's not working.
Welcome to Deborah's Tree.
Yes, we
We're
can
a
hear it.
nonprofit that's promoting the work of female Swedenborgian authors and scholars and clergy and artists. My name's Reverend Rosalind Taylor, and I really do hope that you enjoy our website today and can find something that's meaningful or helpful to you. When you look around, you'll find things for you to watch and to listen to and read. And of course, we have a donations page if you'd like to help out our cause. So look around, enjoy.
And then the rest of this, you can click on these big squares or you can go to the tabs at the top. So about us. I just want to say this color scheme I picked because sort of magenta is, whatever is a color for spirituality. And so, I did have a debate with, discussion with some of the people, like, is this going to look too feminine? Like, I want this to be for everybody, but I'm trying to go for a color that looks or is about, so to speak, spirituality. So anyway, this about us is everything that I've just said. And then here's the board. It's not up to date because Alison Moore here on the left was our secretary, and she left the board at the end of December. And so Robin is our new secretary. I just have a laugh because the 3 of us submitted photos for this page that are of ourselves at least 10 years ago. We don't want to really admit how old we really are. But president, and then Julie Connor, and some of you, probably Howard, would know her. She's lived in Bernathen for a long time, but she's originally from London. Okay, then the next one is the watch page, which is about links to videos on YouTube. And at this point, we're going to add, as I mentioned, Sarah Walker to this page, but Reverend Sage Cole is a minister in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and she is setting up a Helen Keller Research Center and doing a lot of great work, outreach work with that. And Shada Sullivan, as many of you know, is the daughter of the Ray Bones. I'm drawing a blank.
Barry and Edith.
There we go. And she's a minister in Wilmington, Delaware. And Julie is a retired hospice chaplain. Me, and Reverend Wilma Wake is, I guess, a recently retired minister who for many years ran the Swedenborgian community online. So she had an online ministry similar to what the church idea that I had. And Sage, Julie, myself, and Wilma are the ones that do the spiritual reflections on Thursday morning. So today is Thursday here, and this is Julie's video. It's 7 minutes long, and then but you can see here. Oh, how can I click through to this? Oh, here we go. There's just, I don't know the order. I don't think there's any specific reason or order for this, but how they're displayed. But these are all links to videos. There's one by Shada from the ministers that we have. Sarah said she doesn't really have a lot of content of her own, but we'll have to have a look what we can put up, because a lot what she has is embedded in the local praxis website, but I think there'll be a way to promote her work as well. The next tab is Listen. So this is sort of a podcast series that we're slowly developing. So how we're doing this is separate from Deborah's tree. I mentioned that I'm the pastor or the leader or the facilitator of the home church in Brenathan. The home church in Brenathan holds a brunch the first Saturday of every month with a speaker. I credit the Hurstville Society for this, actually, because back in 2006, I did a 3-month period of helping out as a spiritual leader there when they didn't have a minister. And every other Friday, they had a class given by the minister or the spiritual leader of the day. And once a month, they had a dinner with that. And I just noticed what a wonderful thing it was when the group came together and ate together. And of course, that was a much better attended class than the one without a meal, but it was great. It was wonderful. And I thought, I think this is what we need to add to the home church, because we were just meeting every other Sunday. We still meet every other Sunday. And every now and then we might have, stay later and have coffee together or something. But, there wasn't much socializing. It was very church focused. And I thought we just need to really gel as a community with this idea of a brunch. And then we can reach out to the Brenathan area. We've also invited, there's a congregation from the Swedenborgian Church of North America on the other side of Philadelphia. It takes an hour to get there, but people from that congregation have also joined us occasionally. People from the Lord's New Church have joined us. So every Saturday, every month since, I don't know, September of 2006, I think we've had a brunch and a speaker. Mainly women, and this is part of, it was, my practice of wanting to promote women's voices, because obviously in the Brenathan area and most places, the classes and so forth are usually given by men, male ministers. But here we have lay people and female ministers with us, some men, some male ministers sometimes, but mainly female, giving being the speaker of these brunches. And so we started recording them, just audio recording in August of this year. So in August, organizing a spiritual practice. And it was Reverend Alison Moore, whose picture you saw, as the former secretary of Deborah's Tree. She gave a talk with my son-in-law, Russell Pitcairn, about, because they've worked together organizing a spiritual practice. So how helping people to declutter and organize and get rid of the junk in their physical environments, reordering their physical environments does amazing things for people spiritually and emotionally. And they have some wonderful stories of that happening. And then a Swedenborgian theology of social justice was the topic in September. And Shada Sullivan, Reverend Shada Sullivan, was the speaker for that one. Then in October, we had the launching brunch for the Deborah's Tree, and there's a video of that on our watch page. Then the next two in November and December were about sacred geometry. I mean, the first, it was a little bit over my head. I can't really explain it that much. I followed along most of the time, but anyway, it was fascinating. Linda Simonetti Odner gave the first one, then her daughter Sylvia gave the second one to sort of further explain some of the concepts. there was some kind of technical problem with the first one. So the video, the blog part isn't up yet, but it will be. And then Sylvia did
It's a
not want.
video, Roz.
Yeah, the video. Oh, the video. Oh, Liz was here. Okay.
It's
Sorry, Liz.
yeah.
There's a
Hi.
problem with the video. Hi.
Yeah, well, the issue is it has to be edited because the sacred geometry, like you couldn't understand it with just audio because it's hard to describe all the shapes. And then the second part of it, the person giving it declined to be recorded because once it was Linda and once it was her daughter Sylvia. So we don't have a recording of the second one, but we should pretty soon have a video of the first one.
Oh, okay. So there'll be a bit of a gap. There'll be a bit of a gap, but that's all right.
Mind the gap.
So then in January, which I'll be giving the talk with Liz. And so this is this coming Saturday, just a few days from now. And it's going to be on gender identity. And that will be added to this blog. And I have a link to that. It's going to be completely on Zoom because there's a massive outbreak of COVID in Bernathen at the moment. And I do not want to hang out with anybody from Bernathen. Sorry, Paige, and Liz, but love you guys. Don't want to be hanging out with you right now. So we're going to be on Zoom. And I've got a Zoom link that I can share with you if you want for the talk about gender identity from a sociological point of view, which Liz is going to talk about, and from a theological point of view, kind of the range of theological responses that I've seen in the Swedenborgian and New Church communities to the issues of gender identity, gender dysphoria, the whole topic, all the topics related to gender. So that is our listen podcast page. Oh, and another idea I have for this page is I have access now finally to recordings of my dad, Reverend Douglas Taylor's talks on the radio that he did from 1969 to 1974, something like that, on KYW in Sydney. There was a 15-minute Sunday night little talk, the Church of the New Jerusalem. That's how the guy used to introduce it every time. And anyway, so I just thought there might be a fun way to do a sort of father-daughter commentary on Swedenborgian theology with episodes where like this is what he said and this is my commentary on it or something. There might be another blog, but we'll see. I mean, another podcast, but right now this is what we have. Okay, next tab, read. And so we have books and publications and articles. The books that we have at this point, all available on Amazon. Heaven Sent, which is a wonderful fiction by Alison Longstaff Moore, and then Healing Words, a Sampler of Wholeness Theology, which I edited, which is several essays, and that was from 2005. And then this is God's Table, Finding Church Beyond the Walls by Anna Woofenden. And it's about the church that she founded was the Garden Church, which is an outdoor church. And you have to read the book, but it's amazing. Her work has been amazing. The publications that we have up at the moment, The Messenger is the newsletter of the Swedenborgian Church of North America, otherwise known as the Convention Church or General Convention. Currently, the editor is Becky Greenwood, and so that's why it's on there, because she writes an editorial and she's doing The Messenger. If she is succeeded by a man, I guess we'll take that down, but right now, Becky is up there with The Messenger. The Theta Alpha Journal is the editor now is Helen Kennedy. That's been around since the early 1900s, and it's the journal of the women's organization Theta Alpha in the General Church. And then Voice was also edited by Helen Kennedy from 2001 to 2007. It's a newsletter from an organization that popped up amongst General Church membership that were sort of interested in what I would call emergent new church. So sort of they were critiquing the current theological positions and practices within the general church particularly. And the newsletter's got a lot of very interesting articles. Then these other articles are different ones from different women in the North American church. And I'm seriously asking for input from anybody else around the world who's got articles or anything you want to contribute to this. Okay, so Rebecca Esterson is one of the professors at the Center for Swedenborgian Studies, which is the theological school for the Swedenborgian Church in North America. And on the Swedenborg Foundation blog, she had this article on mutuality, meaning, and mirrors. Quite a while back, Kimberly Hinrichs, who's a minister in the General Convention, was asked to, or wrote this article for Studia Swedenborgiana, which no longer exists, but distinguishably one envisioning a confluence of feminist and Swedenborgian theology. It was a very well-researched article. So then Alison has two items here, one from her blog and one was a sermon that she wrote. And then distinguishably one, a wholeness theologian's response was, I was asked to write a response to that one by Kim Hinrichs. And then Sony Sonesson-Werner, she's currently the president of the Swedenborg Foundation. And this was an article that I forget where this came from, the Swedenborg Foundation, probably from their blog, I think, yeah. So that's what we have currently on read. Okay, enjoy the artists. So far, it's just Eleanor's paintings. This is an example of, I'll follow the link, it's to her website. She had a lot of different kinds of art, but these ones, which were mainly what were up in the art show that we did, combine, oh, did I do that? Some of the themes from yoga and Indian, you can see in here. Oh, look at that, it's just scrolling through. Help, stop. Wait, I can't get back to where I was. Maybe if I do that. Okay. But she has other kinds, and a lot of it has to do with the neuroscience mapping from Swedenborg and other sources about the brain. Very in-depth stuff. Okay, blog. We have actually 3 blogs. First one is Alison Moore's blog, In This Moment, and she just posted one for 2021. She's a really good writer. Very interesting to read what she's written. The next one claims to be me, but it isn't really. It's the excerpted inspirations that I told you about that we put out on Tuesday mornings. Liz has put together this beautiful backdrop and then the link to the inspirations. And way down at the bottom, we say coming soon, and I'm hoping it's coming soon, a women's companion to conjugal love. So I have a lot of information, a lot of stuff that women have written in as we went through the book Conjugal Love and what their responses were. It's in very raw form, and I need an editor to really pull it together to make a blog. And that's going to happen in the future, hopefully near future. And then the final blog, New Christian Woman. This comes from our Women in the General Church. I think it's once a week that something is posted. And if you go down to December, the 1st of December, 2021, Jen Beiswinger, Being Mary. So that's our 3 blogs. Okay. Events have been organized into upcoming, past, and ongoing. So upcoming, it's the one I told you about, the gender identity. Oh yeah, look at that. Talk on Saturday. This one is in the present, Deborah's tree. Gathering Leaves, it says 2022. We're going to have to change that to 2023 because Gathering Leaves has been deferred yet another year because of COVID, and it will be held at the Lord's New Church. In the past is the one I told you about, Eleanor's talk was Sacred Systems of Interoception, A Journey Through Inner Space, and other things that I've told you about ongoingly. The Theta Alpha International Forum, I don't think that's actually that active, but, and then Helen Keller Spiritual Life Center is the research center that I told you about that Sage is developing. Okay, donate. A very important page for anybody that's trying to run a nonprofit. So supporting women's causes. We've chosen Women for Afghan Women, which was around from the first problems with the Taliban 20 years ago. And it's a reputable organization that is able to support women, in the situation that they're in Afghanistan. Donate to Deborah's Tree, which if you're in the US is tax deductible, and then an opportunity to subscribe to our email list. Contact us, our mailing address, and a little bit about Liz, and an invitation to get in touch if the website's not working that well for you, and another opportunity to donate. So there we have it. The website. Did anybody want to see anything else again before I stop the share? Here's Liz.
Hi, guys.
So that's my presentation. Again, any questions, comments?
I've got a question, Ros. You mentioned early on about the spiritual and not religious. And I just, cause, I mean, that's very much my own interest, is looking at that group of people. And I wonder what's been your experience? Have you had any successes with reaching out to that wider spiritual, non-religious part of the population that are perhaps not Swedenborgian?
No, I haven't gone there yet, because my thought was at this point to really get clear about what we can offer to people that are spiritual and not religious from through the lens or whatever of female spirituality. There could be a lot that people could do, which I think Off the Left Eye is doing. To reach out into the general population of people that are spiritual but not religious. But with this specific niche of women's spirituality, haven't done any of that. I said I am following some of the spiritual but not religious, like women in women's spirituality movement. Some of those are Christian. Some of those are very focused on their specific spirituality, and some of them are much more what am I going to say, global. I don't know, they have all kind of different ways of approaching spirituality. I'm following them, some of them are following me. There hasn't been any interaction. I'm not a Twitter expert, so I don't really know how I would further that, but the truth is that I am very busy. You have my hands full just in this initial stages of Deborah's Tree. So I don't really feel competent to say anything particularly Swedenborgian, in that arena.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Hi, Ros. Are you able to define what that difference is, or how you see that difference between spirituality and religion?
Well, just in very basic terms, I'd say religion would be an organized set of beliefs that the adherents are expected to follow. A development of a community that follows those beliefs and has specific practices like worship or classes or missionary work or whatever it is. Spirituality, I think, is more a person's individual relationship with how they understand the divine or the non-divine, and communities that develop around that sort of individual practice sort of thing. I don't know. That's just my vague initial. Do you have any thoughts about that? How would you differentiate those, Joe?
Yeah, that's reasonably close to how I would define it. There would be a few nuances that I'd probably add to it. I think that personal approach to religion is being opened up more, but it's always been around. Mystics, for example, show that it's possible to have a personal engagement with spiritual material that's not organisationally based necessarily. But organisations can spin off from those leadership changes of mystics and their writings and their teachings. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's always an interesting, where the balance is. But thanks.
Thank you.
There's a question in the chat, a couple of things from Paige. She's written here, have you considered adding links to any videos put out by Off the Left Eye that are led by women, and perhaps book reviews and books written by Swedenborgian women authors?
Yeah, Ros, I'm thinking there are definitely some, not many, Off the Left Eye that are led by women. And I think that would be a logical link to have.
Yeah.
And as far as books, not just the books themselves, but book reviews. For instance, Wilma has written a book recently on autism in adults, or I forget what the title is, but so there, I think book reviews would encourage people to look at the books.
Oh, right. So that, yeah, we would probably, yeah, so Liz and I will have to confer on how we would, where we would locate on the website the reviews of the books.
I think they could be where you have the books. You could,
Yes.
you could just in that section.
Yeah.
And the videos could go where the videos are with links to the Off the Left Eye.
Right. Well, that's great. Thank you. That's
I
really
also,
good.
I think David's and Stan's, or Joe, I can't remember which one, which of you, spiritual and not religious. There's, of course, a great deal of interest in that here in the US. And I'm joining a book club that's going to start, I think, next week on being the church in the pandemic era, which is to look at the world changers, pandemic world changers that need to occur. And it's going to address some of these topics, I think.
Right. Any insights that you have on that would be great to get.
Yeah, I'm just haven't started it, haven't gotten into the book yet.
Right. Yeah, but future.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Great page. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Ros? Just be aware that your microphone is probably muted. If you want to say anything, you'll just need to unmute yourself.
Silence is
Doesn't look like it. It looks like everybody's happy. Look, I'd like to say thank you very much, Ros, for your presentation this morning or this evening, depending upon where you are. I found it fascinating. I've actually looked your page up on Deborah on Facebook and liked it while you've been talking. And we've just established in Melbourne our own social media pages, and we'll link across to yours. I think it'll be lovely, fascinating to get that interaction between these different pages. And that social media is such a huge part of everyday life these days, and I think it's something we need to be very active on. I do applaud your efforts, and I'm really fascinated to see what you've done. I look forward to reading and listening and watching some of it. And look, again, I thank you for presenting to us today. And thanks everyone for attending and taking part.
David, I have a question about the chat. Is that going to be preserved in some way that I can read it? Or maybe I'll just put my glasses on and I can read it. But I mean,
what I can do is I'll copy it for you before I close the link down, and hopefully I can email it to you. How's that?
That'd be good.
So if I copy that now and I'll drop it into an email straight away so I don't lose it.
Yes. And thank you everyone that have been writing little comments. I'm sorry. Without glasses,
It's a curse, isn't it?
Nice to meet you all.
Likewise, nice to see you all. Thank you, Ros, and thanks, David, for organising it.
And I'll just remind everybody, we've got Joe talking tonight at 8 o'clock, so feel free to join us. The Zoom link, if you join us, will be different. So be aware of that different Zoom link, and it'll be available. We hope it'll be available on YouTube, I think is all I can say at the moment. But look.
It will be one way or another, whether afterwards or during the session, yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So look, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you again, Ros, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Ros. Yeah.
Bye.